What you've been taught about the FIRE movement will most likely lead you to financial and emotional ruin. Today, I will do a deep dive on everything you need to consider when it comes to financial independence, retire early, so that you are equipped with the complete checklist for success. And spoiler alert, it's not about the 4% rule, index funds, or living in a van in order to save 105% of your income. You see, a lot of people like to make FIRE a simple process when in reality it is one of the most financially, socially, and psychologically complex adventures of your life. In this video, my goal is to leave no stone unturned and dissect everything you need to consider if you've decided to start on your path towards financial independence and retiring early. I will take a look at the definition and different branches of the movement. Then we will see what are the different reasons you might want to go on that path and what each of these reasons mean for your journey. Then I will show you what lifestyle choices it takes to achieve it and what you need to pay attention to. After that, we'll talk about investing and how the popular rules like the 4% and others can be extremely dangerous for your financial and emotional well-being. By the end, I will talk about what happens after you achieve FIRE and how one common mistake people make can lead you to ruin. So, let's begin. Hi, my name is Ognian, and today I will show you how to retire while being on fire. Wait, that's probably not it. Today, I will give you clear instructions on how to get fired. Wait, people probably don't want that. Alright, let's see what's going on here. Financial independence, retire early, or FIRE, is a lifestyle movement that prioritizes extreme saving and investing in order to be able to retire earlier than traditional methods might allow. Oh, okay. So let's talk about that. Now, I will not talk about where the movement came from, arguments about who first used the term, etc., etc. The fact is, the FIRE movement has been inspiring people all over the world to make certain changes to their living so that they don't wait for the official government-mandated retirement age to stop doing their traditional work. Throughout the years, there have been many branches of the FIRE movement. Lean FIRE, Coast FIRE, Barista FIRE, Fat FIRE, Geo FIRE, Happiness FIRE, etc., etc. It's just fancy names for different ways of achieving the same thing. Don't let them confuse you. It basically comes down to 4 variables for saving, earning, working, and living. First, how much are you willing to save from your current income? Second, how much more money can you earn? Third, will you be willing to do any type of work once you transition into FIRE? And fourth, location. Where do you live? Where can you live? And where are you willing to live? That's it. The different combinations of these 4 variables and the extent to which you push them will determine the type of FIRE you're willing to strive towards. For example, you might not want to live like a saint in the mountain and save every possible penny you earn. However, if your income is not enough, then you will have to find a way to increase either the money you get paid for your time or work more time for the same amount of money. And the balancing act of that will create a specific situation on the FIRE path for you. Or you might want to transition into a lower paid but more fulfilling job or business activity. Then you will need less money invested because you know that even if you had all the money in the world, you will still want to do that thing. So it doesn't make sense to delay your FIRE a lot when you will be working either way. Add to the mix the fact that you might be willing to play with different locations, with different costs of living, work remotely in a less expensive area, etc., etc., and the possibilities are endless. And because the possibilities are endless, only you can decide what path you will take. But in order for you to decide that, you need to explore what attracted you to the FIRE movement in the first place. This is crucial. Don't overlook it. You need to think deep. You can't just stop with, oh, I want more time for myself, or oh, I hate my boss, etc. Analyze yourself and understand on every single possible level why you want it. In this part of the video, I'll help you do that with me. First, let's start with one of the main reasons I think the FIRE movement got so popular in recent decades. It is the meaninglessness of a lot of modern jobs. You see, I am the last person that will glorify some distant past where wars were frequent and people died from tooth infection. However, the recent labor situation has gotten so ridiculously detached from what we have evolved as species that it is no wonder that people are getting frustrated. Homo sapiens was evolved for working with its body. moving a lot in nature and under the sun, chasing animals, picking berries, chopping wood, exploring the next valley, etc., etc. And now, people are forced to sit in an air-conditioned concrete cell within a concrete jungle, staring at a box for 8 to 10 hours, creating or working on things they can't touch for bosses that might not even live in the same continent as them. People are so detached from a lot of the things they work on that they're willing to do anything to escape. And it is understandable. A notable economist, more famous with starting a movement that later killed 100 million people, Karl Marx, developed the idea of the alienation of labor. And while I am as anti-communist as it gets, the idea is actually very true. So, what is it? Imagine you're working at a donut factory. You're standing at a conveyor belt, putting jelly into donut holes for hours and hours. You don't get to design the donuts, choose the flavors, or decide how many to make. All you do is put jelly in donut holes. Or let's say you're writing computer code for a huge corporation. You are a specialist in writing an exact piece of code for a specific task. And that's what you do. You don't know the servers where the code lives. You don't know whether the people using the product you are building are satisfied, and you never even get to see them. According to Karl Marx, this kind of work is alienated labor. It's alienated because you don't feel like you're putting your creativity or personality into your work. You're just doing a repetitive task that doesn't make you feel like you're being yourself. Marx thought that alienated labor was a big problem because it made people feel disconnected from their work and their lives. He believed that it led to poverty, inequality, and social unrest. Now, let's put this into simple terms. Imagine you're building a dog's house as a project for your neighbor's dog. You're using your imagination, creativity, and skill to create something both useful and beautiful. You feel connected to your work because you're putting your own unique stamp on it. This is the opposite of alienated labor. It's work that makes you feel good about yourself and feel like you're making a difference in the world. To give a real-life example, I literally had a friend who worked for a research corporation, and he created PDFs that were basically presentations for specific problems. He sent those PDFs to an email, and that was it. That was his job. Then the company sent them to their clients, and he later found out from other people that the clients hardly glance over these PDFs for a minute while they are in the subway on their way home. He was literally putting sometimes up to a week into them. This was so crushing to him, and he literally told me he preferred to stack boxes with tomatoes all day long because at least at the end of the day he could see the results of his labor. So this explanation sets the stage for the first topic we need to cover in the current section of the video, where I help you understand why you want FIRE in the first place. Because you hate your job. You see, if you hate your job, and I completely understand why you would, then you have to deeply evaluate yourself and the situation you're in. Perhaps you don't even need the FIRE movement in the first place. Maybe you need to start thinking about changing your career or starting your own business around something you're passionate about. It could be that such a long time has passed since you have been on that path that you even forgot there is a possibility for it. And there is. Luckily, as much as I hate most of the modern workplace, we don't have slaves anymore. So you are not a slave. Don't act like one. Besides, when hating your job is the only reason why you are pursuing FIRE, then you are only fueled by fear and hatred. Now, don't get me wrong. Fear is a great motivator, but it's not enough. You shouldn't only be running from something. The best results are achieved when you are running both from and towards something. So, envision what you want out of life. If you want to do meaningful work, then find some meaningful work. No need to waste your time with dreams of retiring early when you don't even want to retire in the first place. Okay, second reason why you might want to achieve FIRE: for optionality and a safety net. You don't want to lay on the beach all day, and you don't exactly hate your job. However, you wake up in cold sweat during the night when you think about getting fired or your boss not treating you well and you having to put up with it. Then, my friend, what you need is optionality and safety, not retirement. And the calculation for that is completely different. What you're striving towards is basically not exactly FIRE, but FI, and that is financial independence. If you want that, you should focus on your survival number, not your FIRE number. The survival number is a term I use for the amount of money you need per month to survive. Now, when I say survive, I mean survive. Going to restaurants and paying for Spotify is not survival. We're talking bills, food, medical expenses, basic transportation, clothes. That's it. If you have people who depend on you, like children or elderly, you include their survival number in the mix. Let's give an example. If you can survive on $1,000 per month, then the moment your income from your investments reaches $1,000 per month, you have achieved your survival number. Now, your retirement number might be $3,000 per month because you include a Netflix subscription, restaurants, and vacations. However, the $3,000 a month number is not something to be concerned with because you just want to be able to transition from unemployment or toxic work environment without accepting the first offer because you are starving. People who are trying to survive don't go on vacations and don't eat beefsteaks at restaurants, so please understand the difference. A third reason why you might want to achieve FIRE is because you simply want to be lazy all day long. You want to lay at the beach and drink beer and then binge watch Netflix. In that case, you simply don't want to work ever again, and this is one of the scenarios where you actually need your FIRE number and you are literally pursuing financial independence to retire early. I will talk more about how to calculate this number and how to achieve the money for it because I personally don't believe in the 4% rule, but this will be later. For now, what you need to know is that you are full on balls to the wall in the FIRE movement. You hate working and you just want to chill. To me, that will seem like a horrible idea, but I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to tell you that for you, the calculation is different than that of the previous two examples, and you'll be needing a lot more money in order to achieve your goal. However, I really encourage you to think deeply about it. And by deeply, I mean in details. Like, for example, day 27th. You're on the beach. You are already sunburned. You are trying to hide under the umbrella. You are already half drunk. It is your 13th straight day of drinking. You walk back to your room. You try to go to sleep. You are not even tired and can't sleep. Besides, your skin is in blisters from the sun. You go for a walk. There is no one to call to walk with you because everyone you know is working or is far away. I'm talking that level of detail. Are you sure you want this? Really? Or is it just a delusional fantasy born out of a shallow 30-second thinking? For example, I can say that for myself with 100% certainty that sounds like a living hell. If I wanted to, I have the ability to do exactly that. I have a place to go in Greece, right on the Mediterranean Sea, on the beach, without paying rent, and I can live an okay life with the passive income I have from my investments without working at all. Have I thought about doing it? No, not for a second, because this life isn't for me. If it is for you, then you do you, but please first think about it in details. Alright, now let's get to the last reason why you might want to achieve FIRE. Because you want to pursue projects and hobbies that you are passionate about. Perhaps you like super marathons, but you know you'll never be good enough to get paid. Or you want to start your own music band, or perhaps volunteer in a dog shelter. Or you want to travel to the best restaurants in the world and try different food traditions. Whatever it is, you are almost certain it won't pay you any money, and so you need to have the income that allows you to pursue those things. In that case, you are 100% right to pursue the FIRE movement. And you need to get to a number which can comfortably pay you for the activities you wish to do. This is not a survival number. This is not just financial independence. You actually need to get to full FIRE. Just a small note here. It is possible that with a bit more creativity and entrepreneurship spirit, you can make money from some of these activities. Now, turning them into a big profitable business is a tricky thing, because I think that the moment you start getting paid for your hobby becomes your job, not the other way around. But hey, perhaps that's just me. If you can make a little bit of money from these activities, then you might actually need a lower FIRE number or monthly income than you have thought. However, never assume it as a given thing. Always test before you quit your job with a FIRE number that has the assumption of those hobbies making you money baked in it. Alright, let's get into the part where we talk about what lifestyle choices you need to make in order to achieve FIRE. A lot of people are giving all sorts of advice on how you should save and what food to eat and how to not buy new bed but make one yourself instead, etc, etc. I personally find this unnecessary because literally every person is in their own unique situation. what you need to know are the principles. Basically, the bigger the delta or the difference between what you make and what you save, the faster you will achieve FIRE. Shocking, I know. But sometimes in the ocean of complexity, we need to be reminded of the simple things. From that principle comes your choice that depends on your personal preference. If you earn 100K a year and you spend 30K, you would be worse off than if you had spent 20K. But what if you want to spend 30K for the life you live now? Well, try to make 110K. Either way, you'll be saving 80,000. You also have to decide on how much you are willing to sacrifice. Each dollar you spend is a dollar that could have been invested. So ask yourself if you really want to spend it. For example, if you want to buy that new shiny car, it will cost you 3 years of freedom. It's not a mind trick, this is literally how reality works, but people often forget about it. Now, maybe that trade-off is worth to you, maybe it isn't. You need to decide, but you have to know what that trade-off is. And from here, the combinations become endless. Do you work 2 jobs? Do you work 1 and save obsessively? Do you work 2 and still save obsessively? Or do you start a business with a high likelihood of failure, but also with that option having the fastest way to success? It's up to you to decide, because no one knows you better than yourself. Another lifestyle choice you have to make is something I see a lot in the FIRE movement, and that is geo-arbitrage. It is the idea of either moving to a lower cost place while you accumulate your wealth if you are able to work remotely, or working in a more expensive area and then immediately switching to a lower cost area once you retire. On the surface, this seems smart, and indeed, for some people it might be. But honestly, I see it as very problematic, and trust me, I have given it a lot of thought, especially once the income from my investments grew large enough to support me without having to work. My issue is this. It is an extreme sacrifice to live for years at some place and then suddenly uproot yourself just so that you can save a bit on rent or retire a few years earlier. And the more you want to save, the more absurd and remote the geo-arbitrage has to get. I will give an extreme example in order to illustrate the point, but sometimes when I listen to FIRE enthusiasts, I see it is something that actually gets done. So, imagine you're living in New York. You grew up there, you studied there, your family and childhood, colleague, friends are there. You marry in New York, your spouse's friends and family are also there. You hustle in a job, you create connections and friendships in it. Same for your spouse. But since you are both passionate about achieving FIRE and understand that you won't be able to retire before you reach your 60s if you keep living there, you decide that you want to retire in your early 40s and you move to rural Peru. You are immediately able to not work and live off your investments. Great! Now you have moved from New York, USA, to a small town in Peru. All your friends and relatives are on another continent. You don't speak the local language, and a lot of people don't speak English. There are no yoga and CrossFit classes that you used to go to. Hospitals are shit. And if you have children, good luck with the education system. Well, okay, you've achieved FIRE. And what's the point? I'm obviously giving an extreme example here, but I see a lot of people who want to move to countries where they have no social connections and that have vastly different healthcare and school systems, and it just seems weird to me. I mean, yes, it's gonna take you longer to achieve your FIRE number if you're living in a more expensive city, but you're going to be bored in your small town in Peru after 6 months anyways, and you will probably find something to work. So why not simply prolong your work in New York or London or Paris or Athens or wherever while you wait to achieve your FIRE number? I find it discouraging to even move cities, let alone countries and continents. The idea of leaving all the friendship networks and family behind just so that I can stop working 5 years earlier is something that I just don't understand. I would much rather find a second job or try my luck in business. Now, I get that if you're moving from California to Utah or from London to Liverpool, it's not that big of a deal in terms of culture, school and healthcare systems, but also the cost of living arbitrage isn't as great. Generally, the bigger arbitrage you want to make and the more years you want to pull your FIRE closer to your present, the more stuff you have to sacrifice. Whether you want to do it, it's up to you. And talking about moving abroad, the next lifestyle choice you have to decide on is children. First, You have to decide whether you want to have them, and if yes, how many. For example, I want to have at least 3 children, and I also don't want them to grow in an apartment, regardless of how big and with a great location it is. So even though right now I have achieved an okay income from my investments that would allow me to say I am retired, even for the place where I currently live, the picture will vastly change when I have 3 kids. And so just because you have calculated that you can live off X number of dollars a month right now, as a, let's say, single dude renting a 1-bedroom apartment, does not mean that you can stop working when you achieve these X numbers of monthly income from your investments. It is pointless, because the moment your first child appears, you will have to re-enter the workforce, but you will be at a severe disadvantage. And since we already talked about geo arbitrage, if that is hard when you're just with a partner, imagine doing it with kids. For me, that becomes from simply hard to a nightmare. You can't just tell your 12-year-old kid to move with you from Sweden to the rural jungles of Vietnam. They might not even know English well enough yet. If you're not living in an English-speaking country, the schools will be in the local language. It's just not something I think is healthy. So have these things in mind and include them in your calculations. Next and last in our list of lifestyle choices you need to make in order to achieve FIRE is the huge impact personality has to play. This is something I have not heard anyone talk about, but it is vital for your success. Before that though, if you're getting value out of this video, press the like button and subscribe to the notification bell. That way, you show me you like the content and would want more of it, and also when you're subscribed with the bell, you won't miss any of my future videos. So, let's talk about the significance of your personality type. When you start any endeavor, especially such a long and life-changing one as the pursuit of FIRE, it is crucial that you know what type of character you have and how you will react to certain things that will get in your way. I'm talking about knowing yourself, yes, but also about literal scientific personality traits that will help you better understand yourself. One such test that I have used a lot is a test I heard from Jordan Peterson called the Big 5 personality type. There are tons of free tests out there. You can Google it and do one for free. I highly recommend it, and I will give you a brief example why. A key feature of FIRE, especially its more extreme forms, is frugality and sacrificing a lot today for a better future. This character trait is known as conscientiousness in the Big 5 and is basically responsible for dutifulness, orderliness, discipline, work ethic, and the ability to delay gratification. I, for example, scored 97 out of 100 on this trait in my Big 5 test I did on Jordan Peterson's website, which means that out of 100 people in a room, on average, I will be more conscientious than 97 of them. So for me, for example, I actually take great pleasure in delaying gratification and working for the future. I also have a very hard time relaxing. I just can't stop working at 5 p.m. because it's 5 p.m. I stop working when what I want to do is done. And that might take months and even years. But I was born that way. If you aren't, of course, it is a good skill to cultivate. But if you have something like 25 conscientiousness, you will never be able to get it up to 97. And that's okay. You probably have other strengths, which will be my weaknesses. But what I'm saying is that if you are very low in conscientiousness, it is absolutely catastrophic for you to start the extreme FIRE movement where you delay gratification for 15 years and withhold every possible penny in order to invest it. Or do 14-hour work days for a decade. I'm not saying to give up, but perhaps try achieving it in a different way or with a longer time frame. Perhaps you are low in conscientiousness, but very high in the trait openness and low in neuroticism. In that case, you might not be able to save and work as much, but you might be more suited to do the already discussed geo arbitrage, which allows you to live a fulfilling life by moving to a lower cost area. These are all just examples of combinations of different traits which I'm giving you in order to get you to start thinking. Who are you? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What do you excel at? The answers to these questions will let you know what type of FIRE you want, how fast can you realistically achieve it, and also, the most important question of all, do you actually want and need it, or are you just living someone else's ambition? Alright, so we talked about why you might want to pursue FIRE and also what lifestyle choices you will need to make. Now, let's get into the investment strategies that will actually allow you to achieve FIRE. There are many types of calculations and strategies out there, but the most famous one is the 4% rule. It says that each year you are allowed to sell 4% of your shares safely because the growth of the market will make up for that. However, Ask any retiree that got into retirement with that 4% rule during a prolonged bear market, and you will find out why this likely isn't a good idea. Here is the math behind it. Let's say you have $1 million in your portfolio. You are allowed to sell 4% of it, meaning $40,000. You have decided that this is enough for you to live, and so you decide to retire. However, the market drops by 30%. Now you have $700,000. If you want the same 40,000, you have to sell 5.7% of your portfolio. Oops. And if by some chance we enter into a so-called lost X number of years period and you don't have cash flow, things get ugly. This phrase is used for a set of time in which the stock market hasn't gone anywhere. You will sometimes hear it as a lost decade in the media, but it can be for any number of years. Here is a visualization of what that means. It's a chart of the S&P 500 index that supposedly always goes up and is inflation adjusted. Now, granted, it does go up over time, but check this out. 30 years, then 24 years, then 15 years of lost periods. Will your retirement start being such a period? No one knows. It's a gamble. It's a gamble with your life. Can you afford that? Imagine what this famous 4% rule will do to your portfolio in such periods. You will get wrecked. Also, have in mind that the original study that came up with the 4% rule calculated it for a 30-year retirement period. If you pursue FIRE, when you couple that with the increasing lifespan due to healthcare tech innovations, then you might actually be looking at 50 or more years of retirement. And in those situations, big drawdowns or years of flat markets become even more likely, and I certainly don't like that. You see, I would much prefer to calculate my FIRE number based on the income that my assets are producing instead of fixed numbers for withdrawal like 4% rule or a total asset amount of, let's say, $1 million that I have to start selling. In my opinion, the only safe way to do it is through income from your portfolio, not the 4% withdrawal rule. Imagine owning a mix of dividend-paying stocks, ETFs, and real estate that pays you rent, and the combination of those cash flows equals your FIRE number. Wouldn't that make you way more comfortable? You have $1 million. You have, for example, $60,000 per year coming from it. You get the $60,000 and your principal, the $1 million, stays the same. In time, if you picked quality assets, both your income and principal will increase, at least with inflation or even more than that, slowly making you even richer while you're enjoying retirement. And in case you have picked higher yielding investments that give you more current income than you need, but don't grow as much, you can reinvest the difference and create your own growth. For example, if you need $60K and you receive $80K, you reinvest $20,000 every year, and even if those original $60K stay the same because your dividends aren't growing, the reinvestment of those $20,000 will slowly increase the $80K to $82K, then $84, etc. Either way you choose, this is certainly the investment strategy I would pick and is the best one in my opinion. If you want help with setting it up, I have a free masterclass where I do a deep dive into my investment strategy and philosophy, and I talk about investing for passive income that eventually can allow you to achieve FIRE. You can find the link for it in the description. Now, one thing you need to be careful with are estimations without margin of safety. Please don't think you can retire at the exact number of passive income that your expenses are. If you need $2,000 a month to live a minimalist lifestyle, for the love of God, don't retire on $2,000 monthly passive income. You must have room for error and unforeseen events. Cars break down, health issues come up, roofs start to leak. You can't calculate those things. It's not like a once-in-a-year expense where you divide it by 12 and you're done. I, for example, paid over 15,000 euros to fix some issues with my teeth. I'm not gonna do that every year. I'm not gonna do that even every decade. In fact, the problem has been solved for good. But had I not done it, my dental health would have been in serious jeopardy by the time I was in probably my 50s. However, I could not have seen this happening 5 years prior. In my opinion, it is best to have at least 1 year worth of emergency funds in cash and at the same time a bit more than your monthly needs as passive cash flow in order to have a safety margin. For example, to support the life you want to live, only spend around 70 or 80% of your passive income. And if unforeseen event comes, you use your emergency fund and then refill the emergency fund with the remaining 20%. or if you have opportunity to reinvest your income when quality stocks are at a discount, reinvest the remaining percentage and live a bit more modestly in order to increase your investments. You will figure the exact details and numbers. These are just suggestions. But never plan retirement right on the edge. Always have a margin of safety. You don't know what life will throw at you. Speaking of not knowing, I just discussed negative unexpected events. But let's think positively. With the advancements in healthcare tech, and if you take care of your health, it is entirely possible that you might live on average until you are 90 or 100 years old. Now, this is positive for you, but negative for your capital. Because if you pursue full FIRE, that means that you won't be working and contributing, but only drawing from it. This is where my thesis of retiring only on passive income from your assets with included margin of safety comes. If you add to that the internal growth of the dividends or rent you receive or reinvestment plan I described, then you can be a lot more assured that your funds will last you indefinitely. This is not the case if you simply have a fixed pool of assets or cash in the bank and you withdraw from it. You might have calculated it will last you 30 years, but what if you live 50? No one knows when their time is up, and it would be a shame to have to look for a job in your later elderly stages of life after being out of the job market for 30 years. All right, so we have the strategy, we know why we want FIRE and what type of FIRE, and we know what lifestyle choices are ahead of us. Now is the time for the last part. What happens once we actually achieve financial independence and retire early? Don't tell yourself that you will think about it when it happens or that it is a good problem to have and you shouldn't bother now. I want you to seriously sit down and think. How do you imagine your life? What is your plan? What is it you want to do? Going in without a plan can be devastating. For example, as I already discussed, I'm not sure I like the idea of retiring to a different country after achieving FIRE. However, an even worse scenario is to plan to retire in another country and don't plan to work at all and don't have any passion projects to pursue and not having any social network or family in that place. This sounds like a recipe for serious depression. Human beings were not created to just sit around and enjoy the sun. We are just not meant for that. So, within that framework, even if you are not relocating, there are two things you seriously need to consider: lack of purpose and social isolation. The lack of purpose might come because you are not working anymore. And yes, I know you hate your job or small business and want to get the hell out of it. I know, but you need to understand that even if you hate it, it gives you structure and purpose. That purpose might be to get home by 5 and pay your bills. It's not the greatest, but it is one. So don't underestimate it. You need to think of a purposeful activity and project before you achieve FIRE, otherwise you are asking for a mental disaster. It is proven that people's mental and physical health decline when they stop working and contributing to society, especially if they are alone. Which brings me to the second issue, social isolation. Even if you are not relocating, you need to consider the fact that you will no longer be engaged with colleagues. Also, you might want to go for a hike Wednesday afternoon, but everyone you know is working and you've got no one to go with. These are real issues that you need to plan for. My ideal scenario would be to have a small community of like-minded people with the same goal and plan activities with them, knowing that you won't be left on your own from Monday morning to Friday afternoon. It is an ideal and hard to accomplish scenario, but hey, it is worthwhile to pursue. And the last thing I will talk about here is that unless you are filthy rich and ridiculously diversified, it is a good idea, at least from time to time, to practice a skill that puts you in contact with an industry and keeps you updated. It will allow you to maintain at least certain level of skills in a field and be updated about it. Otherwise, if you need to go back to the workforce after 10-year absence, it will be hard. Let's say you're a programmer and you haven't done anything for 10 years. Suddenly, you need money and you decide to get out of retirement and find a job. Imagine the shock and horror you will face and the hardships in adjusting to an updated environment. Now, I'm not talking about 4-hour workdays, just a few hours a week perhaps on a passion project, keeping up to date with an industry of your choice. So, in summary, when you're planning such a dramatic change to your life as financial independence, retire early, you need to have a plan. You need to ask yourself first exactly why you want it and whether you actually want FIRE and not something else. Then, if you decide you do, we went through the lifestyle choices you will need to make on your road there. Afterwards, I showed you what I think is the best investment strategy to reach it. And finally, we talked about having a plan for life after achieving FIRE. For example, I am extremely aware of why I'm aiming for it. There is this idea of the impossible trinity of life. It's time, money, and energy. When you are young, you have time and energy, but no money. In midlife, you have energy and money, but no time. And when you are old, you have time and money, presumably, but no energy. The idea is that most people will only ever have 2 out of those 3. And a lot of people think it is impossible to have all at the same time. But I do. My goal is to break the impossible trinity. I believe that if you work hard enough and invest wisely in cash flowing assets, of which dividend stocks are the best choice in my opinion, you can then break the trinity. You can still be in midlife, and since you have the money and energy by default, by investing for passive income aggressively, you can also buy back your time. This is where my desire for FIRE comes from, and I have already said how I'm planning to achieve it. Alright, that's been a longer video than I expected, but I hope you got value out of it and it cleared up the FIRE movement and what you need to retire early with financial independence. Let me know in the comments what is your strategy for FIRE and where are you in your journey. I would love to see your situation and thoughts. And before you go, click on the video that should appear on your screen right now to continue with your investing education that will lead you to freedom. Thank you for watching, and I will see you there.